Hello and welcome to All Villa, No Filler, a podcast all about the world's greatest football team, of course, Aston Villa. Please do remember to like and subscribe. Please comment. If you subscribe, you support the mighty Villa and you hate Birmingham City. Those are the rules. That's what's written in the code of conduct with YouTube. Now, Evann Guessand talked about him a month ago on our scouting show as a potential replacement for Leon Bailey. And what do you know? Aston Villa look like they're going to go and sign the man. Reported by Jacob Tanswell. It was a reluctant Nico, I think, was the first person to report it on Twitter yesterday. But Jacob Tanswell also breaking it in The Athletic, saying up to a 35 million euros. So what's that? 32 million pounds, maybe. Fee. The Telegraph have also reported through Jason Burt that the initial fee will be around 22 million pounds. So obviously that's probably leading to add-ons and all that. Evann Guessand, in case you sort of missed what I said yesterday, last season, 33 games, 12 goals, 9 assists for Nice, 24 years of age, 6'1", big old lad, good on his headers as well. I showed you a fair few of the FBref stats yesterday, how strong he is on that. Certainly a player with a lot of upside, but his stats last season to the season before showed a marked improvement in both his assists and his goals. So key player, somebody with a lot of potential, somebody at the age of 24 who you would think coming into work with Unai Emery by the age of 26, 27 will get to their peak. Very exciting signing for Aston Villa indeed. After a quiet transfer window where you did wonder, where's it going to go? What's going to happen? Well, looks like we are actually going to be making some moves. And it was in that kind of ballpark I mentioned yesterday, 25 to 30 million. I think that's kind of where Aston Villa are. We're not really going on the big, 50 millions that we saw last season for Onana or 38 million we saw for Ian Maatsen. Now, if we just quickly go to the tactical pad. So yesterday I did cover this, just looking at Aston Villa's squad. You know my feelings about the right centre-back. That absolutely is an area that I believe Aston Villa needs something else in. JD Camvo, a player that we've been linked to from Toulouse, 18 years of age, probably a future French international. That's one to keep an eye on in the coming weeks. We've already had a bid, apparently. But if you look at Aston Villa's attacking area, now this is where I said Aston Villa looked fairly like they needed something else, because his centre midfield, goal, left back, more on that in a second as well, left centre back and right back, Aston Villa look pretty good, right? But it's just in that attacking area you feel like Aston Villa needs something else. And it feels like, let's face it, Leon Bailey's race is run. I think it's just done. I think it's done. It felt like Unai Emery gave up on the guy from about, maybe January onwards. Didn't really feature that much. He got a goal at Club Brugge, came on briefly against Crystal Palace in the FA Cup semi-final, in which he actually played well, to be honest. But overall, it just feels like, 4 seasons now of Leon Bailey, 3 not very good seasons, 1 terrible season last year, and 1 absolutely exceptional season. The consistency, that generally is what wingers are like. They're not very consistent, right? But I think 3 seasons of not great, 1 really poor season last year, intermixed with 1 absolutely exceptional season, it's difficult to rely on that, really. So it felt like Villa were going to do something, didn't it? And I suspect, he's been linked to Fenerbahce, he's been linked yesterday to Besiktas, both in Istanbul. But I suspect Leon Bailey's going to go. I think. But I've been wrong before. I thought Martinez looked like he was going to go. And to be fair, that legitimately was a thing. There was a lot of noise around that. There were clubs interested, but obviously not the right clubs. So we look at Guessand. Where does he fit? Well, very exciting, isn't it? Well, primarily, he'd be on the right. He'd be in that kind of right wing role that Leon Bailey featured in, for us quite a lot. Daniel Marlin started to feature a little bit towards the end of last season. So you would look at that current right wing role, and I would have said before, I think, I'm not sure about Bailey at the moment. Daniel Marlin looks like he's building up to a bbig season. Yes, he's effective on the right. Tends to be where he played for Dortmund. But I actually kind of think Marlin is somebody who's going to be a backup striker as well to Ollie Watkins. And we've seen Marlin play a significant chunk of games already for Villa as a striker. And I think that will continue, which means that I think Guessand is more likely to be the player who we see out on the right should he join Aston Villa. There's pictures of him on the plane flying out here, hopefully to Birmingham. getting into Birmingham Airport. Good WH Smith there. Go buy some, a decent book or something. Not anything by Richard Osman, something better than that. But Guessand, if he comes into the Villa, you'd have to think he's going to go onto the right wing. It tends to be where he featured for Nice. Now, Guessand, as Adam said, this in our scouting show about him a month or so ago, there's something quite Semenyo-ish about him. From what I've watched of him, he's very strong, very difficult to get off the ball, very skillful, likes to give and go. So if he gives, that means he runs in behind. Very useful as a right winger, and also somebody who can play up front. So that, in a way, is quite similar to what Daniel Marlin is. Now, I think he's a different player to Marlin. I think he's a little bit more. Marlin is skillful, but I feel like Guessand maybe is a bit more skillful. Guessand as well, backup striker. So that now means, when I looked at Villa's striker before, and I looked at the squad the other day and looked at Keno Redmond as a backup, I thought, well, if Aston Villa, touch wood, God, pray to all the gods in the world that nothing happens to Ollie Watkins ever, because, what a player. With Watkins, were he to be out, let's say, for a month, Keno Redmond, you're asking a lot of an 18-year-old who's not really scored many goals at all for Feyenoord in his first experience of the Premier League. We're going to gradually let him in, ease him in. I imagine we'll see him a bit in Europe alongside players maybe like Jamal Aloba. Or Jim Aloba, sorry. One or two of the younger players in that. And I think Keno fits into that. But now we have two very solid backup striker options in Evann Guessand and Daniel Marlin. And the versatility, that's what Unai Emery likes. That's what the Villa like. So that now means that Guessand, he can play on the left. So we've got that sorted. He can play up front. He's primarily a right winger. And he can, when we signed Moussa Diaby, that was not a player we tended to see play central, was it? Before. Bayer Leverkusen, when he was there, he was a right winger. He was a touchline player. And you saw that at times for Aston Villa. Do you remember when we played Bournemouth and we were 2-1 down, and in the 89th minute, Moussa Diaby out on the left, cuts out back on his left, whips a fantastic ball into Ollie Watkins, who scores an absolutely sensational header to make it 2-2. We did see some of what Diaby could do on the right, but it tended to be that Diaby played in that central kind of second striker role, played off Watkins, and Leon Bailey played on the right. And to be fair, I thought Diaby did a really, really good job in that. I think there were periods of that season where it looked like other teams were physically trying to outmuscle him, but he did adapt, and he looked like, I think, had he had a second season with Villa, he would have got even better. But now you look at in that area, and I think that is where Villa have a problem. I think Morgan Rogers could do it. He's done it very well at times, but he's not 1,000% consistent in that role, which is why I think Asensio went there, only because at times I think Asensio is just a player who retains the ball a little bit better. And I still think we need something beyond Buendia there, whether that means Asensio himself comes back on loan. Harvey Elliott looks like he's going to RB Leipzig. I think he'd be a good option for us there. Jack Grealish looks like he's going on loan to Everton, wants to stay in the Northwest, perhaps. If that's the case, well, fine. I do like the idea of a technical player like an Asensio there. Rogers, I think, will play there a lot this season, but I also think Rogers might play out on the left, probably not on the right now. I think with Marlon and Guessand there, and who knows what's going to happen with Bailey, that area is very stocked, and I don't think it's where Rogers should go. I think Rogers should come back a little bit more central, whether that's on the left or on the right. But let's not underestimate the idea that Guessand might just play in that role in a kind of Diaby way. Somebody who's been a bit more on the right, his ability to withstand a press is very good. And his defensive numbers as a presser are also exceptional compared to other forwards, if you look at his FBref stats. So he's somebody who defensively, defending from the front, looks like he's going to be a great addition, but also somebody who's very versatile, who might just be molded into a Diaby role. I'm not saying that's what happened. I suspect he'll be out on the right and probably turn into our new Bailey, is what I would suspect. But I wouldn't underestimate seeing him being in the Diaby role, being out on the right, being on the left, and also seeing him a fair amount as a as a striker when we're going to have a great volume of games this season. If we go far in Europe, if we can get far in a cup competition as well, that means Ollie Watkins can't play 90 minutes every single game, can it? I think the likelihood is that Daniel Marlin goes up front when Watkins isn't on the pitch. Redmond might get the odd appearance as well. But there might be occasions where Guessand goes up front as well. It's great to know that we've got quite a few options who can go up there. So Guessand, to me, looks like something that is exactly what Aston Villa needed in attack, versatility, high upside, somebody that was affordable in a market that's been skewed by Manchester United going to spend, what was it, 65 million on Matheus Cunha from Wolves. And from there, then it set the benchmark of this is how much clubs have to pay to get players in who are of the requisite quality to get you into, you hope, the Champions League. Noni Madueke going to Arsenal for what, more than 50 million? Brian Mbeumo going from Brentford to United, what, up to 70 million? I mean, these are the fees clubs are paying at the moment. Aston Villa, we can't do that because of, I think it's primarily SCR rather than PSR is the issue. I think PSR is, I'd like to think it's probably not something we have to worry about anymore, but SCR clearly is an issue we've got to deal with. We've got to box smart. And Evann Guessand as a player with high upside, I don't think £22 million starting fee is prohibitive at all. We sold Jaden Philogene for what, 22, 23 million. Yeah, I think a very exciting signing in that sense. And let me know what you think. Please comment. Please like, comment, subscribe. All of that helps us grow. Please do. We really appreciate that. Otherwise, just some breaking news as I talk. Craig Hope, Newcastle reporter, has said that Newcastle want to sign John Mcginn, or Eddie Howe wants to sign John Mcginn, bring him up as good character and all that sort of stuff. That's not something I expected to see. What I did expect to see is that with Alexander Isak unsettled, Alexander Isak probably unlikely to feature for Newcastle maybe ever again, but at least for the first few weeks of the season. I half suspected that now that Benjamin Sesko has gone from Leipzig to Manchester United, that Newcastle might just be a little bit naughty and think, well, we've got an unsettled striker. Why don't we just throw a big old bid in for Ollie Watkins and see what happens just before playing Aston Villa on the first day of the season at Villa Park. Personally, I don't think Ollie Watkins is going to be kicking off that he wants to go to Newcastle because ultimately, yes, they're in the Champions League. Yes, I've just won a trophy. Yes, it's a great club, but not 100% sure why you'd want to leave Villa for there right now. Manchester United, different cat the fish. I get that. I get it. Big old club. But no, with Mcginn, well, my assumption now is that he'll go to Man United because seemingly every player Newcastle go for ends up at Man United or Liverpool. So John Mcginn, I wish you could look at Man United. That's not going to happen, right? No. Look, I mean, if Newcastle were to bid, 35, 40 million, well, yeah, that's a big old bid. And it's something for Aston Villa to really think about. We've seen a lot of links to Jacob Ramsey as well from West Ham. Apparently, Jacob Ramsey isn't keen on the move himself. Don't blame him. Great reflection on where Aston Villa are as a club, that so many of our players, seem unwilling to really want to leave, and we're able to attract top players. This calendar year alone, we've been able to attract Champions League finalist in Daniel Marlin, Champions League winner multiple times in Marco Asensio, Marcus bloody Rashford, and now Evann Guessand, who had a lot of interest from other clubs as well. So yeah, I mean, John Mcginn. Look, I would love John Mcginn to stay. I think what he offers on and off the pitch is just phenomenal. I think he has a hidden value. I think what he brings off the pitch is a certain character, and he holds players to other higher standards than they might necessarily be were there other people there. Let's look back at the toxicity of the Paul Lambert bomb squad era, right through to the Remy Gard era, when you had, let's say a club captain who wasn't at his best behavior. Right? Sorry about that. He wasn't. And a group of players who seem to give up. And that was partly, if you're a young player coming into that environment, or if you're a potential new player coming into that environment, and you seemingly have a squad of players who just don't care, what's the point? Whereas if you sometimes, Manchester United under Alex Ferguson always had that. They always had players who held others to higher standards and weren't necessarily the greatest players in the world. The Neville brothers weren't technically the best players in the world. Let's say Nicky Butt wasn't the greatest player in the world, or John O'Shea or Johnny Evans. But these sorts of players were quality, but at the same time, not necessarily Barcelona world-class Real Madrid types. But they were the type of people who had good attitudes off the pitch. And if you came in, they held you to a higher standard, which I think is what John Mcginn does and offers. And hence why I think Newcastle would be interested in, because he's a quality player on the pitch underrated in my view, and off it as well. But I'd be very surprised if he moved, to be honest with you. Very surprised. And I don't think I'd be surprised if John Mcginn really wanted to kick off and go, do you know what? Fancy some time up in Newcastle. But we'll see. I don't see it. Otherwise, Jacob Tanswell, again, what a man. What a man Jacob Tanswell is. He's reporting that Lucas Digne is getting close to a new contract. He's verbally agreed a new contract. Jacob Tanswell, he said, as he's entering the final 12 months of his deal, Lucas Digne, the new contract would extend to 2028. Now, I've mentioned before that I think a lot of the deals done by Christian Purslow towards the end of his time at Aston Villa, while Gerrard was there, were really poor. And quite frankly, in the last year or two, Monchi and Vidigani have had to find a way to deal with horrific wages that, quite frankly, were on players that shouldn't have been given to. We're looking at Coutinho. He was past it. You're looking at Leander Dendoncker. I mean, if reports are true about what he's earning, Christ. And Lucas Digne, reports are it was 120k a week. Massive, massive salary. Now, I love Lucas Digne. I think he's been a brilliant signing for Aston Villa. I think for the first year, I was heavily questioned it. I thought, we've spent a lot of money on a player that's got no resale value, and to be quite frank, isn't really going to improve the squad all that much. But I think that what Digne has shown in recent years is he's bought into the club. The another one, thing that he does after every game, his attitude, every single thing about him. If you had doubts about him like I did, he has done absolutely everything to win you round. He's been a massive credit to Aston Villa. And I think, were I to theorise, like the new Tyrone Mings contract, you would assume that his contract, Dean, is going to see his wages reduced and spread out, which means that SCR, it's not as big a deal as, say, were he for the next year earning his reported 120k a week. If that's reduced to, say, let's say, I don't know, 80k, maybe even 60k, with some, on top of the fact that his deal is extended, so the money he would have got over the year then comes later, and potentially add-ons if Aston Villa, I don't know, get Champions League or win Europa League or whatever. That to me strikes me as an intelligent deal to do, because quite frankly, yes, we probably could sell him for a okay-ish fee. We're not going to find probably a better player for what he does than him. And it means that at left back now, Aston Villa have two completely different profiles and maybe one of the single best options in the Premier League, in the sense Unai Emery can go, I can have an ultra-hard defensive player who you would use against, let's say, Bayern Munich, like we did last season, or you've got Ian Maatsen, who you use particularly in home games when you want to take it to another team, and Maatsen can bomb on down the left. I think Maatsen improved massively towards the end of last season. I think he's ready to take massive steps this year. But I think that the idea of Lucas Digne and Maatsen being the two options at left back fills my heart with joy. And like I say, massive credit to Lucas Digne for winning round Unai Emery, because there were links for him to going to Saudi a few years ago. Obviously, I think that salary, you look at it and you think, just got to get rid because it's too big. If my theory is correct, and the wages are probably reduced on the books whilst more spread out, fair play to him, right? And a brilliant attitude and the exact type of player you want at Villa, in the sense of he's very good on the pitch, but off the pitch he really gives it his all, and he's shown his attitude where he's had challenges. Alex Moreno came in, Ian Maatsen came in, and the thing is, some players shrink with competition. He's risen to it, and that's what higher credit can you give them that? So good news there. Lovely to see that report from Jacob Tanswell at The Athletic. John Mcginn, Newcastle, not sure I see it, but Evann Guessand, very, very exciting. Talked about him a lot yesterday when I covered his FB ref stats, comparing him to other forwards. When you compare him to other right wingers, when you compare him to other forwards, he looks absolutely exceptional. When you compare him to other right wingers, that looks like you can see there's still some growth. So against other forwards, he's probably in the top 10%, really. Against other right wingers, he tends to be, or the wingers rather, he tends to be top sort of 20 to 30%. So you would assume there are levels for him to go to. But what I'd encourage you to do, go look at those stats yourself. Go watch some videos of him. I have watched a fair amount now. And you can very much see, you can sort of see the Semenyo-ish comparisons. Very skillful, very good at getting past players, very good at holding the ball up, good link-up play, intelligent. And kind of, if a player gets on his back, he's able to out-muscle them and get away. So runs in behind, good skill, good link-up play, versatile, can play up front, play on the right, maybe even that Diaby roll off Watkins, and also on the left. So versatile forward, exactly what Villa needed. Let's just go and sort out right centre-back, and can we just get an Asensio type? Can we just get that technical player who can link up play, get goals, do all of it? That's I think that's all Villa lack now. But anyway, let me know what you think. Please like, please comment, subscribe. Subscribe if you love the mighty Villa. Up the